Ya Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. مولانا الصدى ذات نزلنا. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله. فاز من اعتصم بحبلكم أمن من لجأ إلى حصنكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. You know, this introduction that we always introduce in the beginning. Brother, if you can please turn down the echo, if you don't mind. This introduction that we always use in the beginning. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. Oh, how we wish that we would have been with you in order for us to achieve a great victory, a grand victory. I used to think that this is just a saying that we said, in all honesty. However, in actuality, this is a narration from Imam al-Rida salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Imam al-Rida salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he tells one of his companions, if you wish to receive the same reward as those who were martyred with Imam al-Hussein, then say, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum. Now the question that begs itself is, how could we receive the same level? How can we, who did not fight, who did not spill blood, receive the same reward? We all have heard the narration, right? On the 20th of Safar, the 40th of Imam Hussein, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari comes to the grave of Imam Hussein, right? Jabir ibn Abdullah, by the way, is the third individual to visit the grave of Imam Hussein. He was the third individual. Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari came to the grave of Imam al-Hussein and he says, I bear witness, Ya ibn Rasulullah, that I am with you. So the companion that was with him, he says, Ya Jabir, how can we be with them when we did not cross a valley, nor walk up a mountain, nor cross a river, nor did we carry a sword, nor did we fight? What does Jabir tell him? Jabir tells him, he says, Ya Atiyya, I have heard the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi lidhikrihi sallu alayhi wa alihi. الثاني على حب الحسن والحسين. لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. الثالثة بأطيب أصواتكم. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد. So Jabir says, I have heard the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi says, he who loves a people is joined with them in their action. In another narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, sallu alayhi wa ala alihi. After the battle, one of the companions of the Imam, he came to the Imam and he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, my brother wanted to come with us, but he was unable to. Something stopped him. He was on his way, but he couldn't make it to the battle. The Imam turns to his companions and he says, give him as much loot as anybody else has gotten. We know that back then when people went to war, they would take loot, right? Loot, spoils of war. So the companion, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why would we give him loot? He didn't fight with us. He says, as long as his heart and his hawa means what? His way, his belief system is with us, then he has joined us. Now, when we come 1400 years ago, right? We're now 1444 years after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi. How does this apply to us? Rather, let's say, why do we relive this ritual and this tradition, these sha'air as we call them in Arabic? Yani 20 years after an issue, 100 years after an incident, it makes sense. It's still fresh within the people's mind. But 1400 years later, especially for us who live in the West, to answer that question, first we have to realize what are rituals, what are sha'air. We see that Islam holds sha'air in a grand place, a place on their own. In fact, in the Quran speaks about sha'air 4 times. Not does it only speak about it 4 times, it also emphasizes them. In this verse says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la tuhillu sha'air Allah wala ash-shahr al-haram. O you who believe, do not violate the sanctity of God's rituals, nor the forbidden month. Allahu Akbar. Let's take it one by one, step by step, as we say. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Who is it addressing? Those who believe. Those who believe. We see that the Quran sometimes speaks, Ya ayyuhan nas, Ya ayyuhal muttaqeen. Here it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. What is Iman? Iman is a claim. Belief is a claim. And a claim is made up of 2 parts. How are you a believer? Why are you a believer? 2 things have to take role in order for you to consider yourself a believer. What we refer to in Arabic as jawarih wa jawanih. Jawarih being your extremities, your physical being. Jawanih being your spiritual, your mental. Your mental belief system and your what? Your external extremities, your limbs. When these 2 come into play, that is a person of belief. That is a believer. A believer is he who has a faith that acts upon it. When we come, we see that Allah has commanded us to do how many prayers? 5 or 3? MashaAllah, we need an answer. 5, ahsantum. 5 prayers. How many rak'ah? How many? Ahsantum, mashallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Not only did it add these prayers, it added specifics to these prayers. The morning only 2, the noon at 4, the afternoon 4, the maghrib 3, the isha 4. It didn't just give you, you know what, just do 1 for the day or 1 for the week. No, do it 5 times and in these specific ways. And before you do it, you have to do something specific. And before you do that, you have to have the intention. Your intention has to be in place. Our scholars take it a step further. They say between those 2, sit and recite the Quran. Prepare your spirituality for this journey, for the journey that you are about to take in front of facing Allah when you want to face the Almighty, the Creator. Prepare yourself. Don't go blindsided. Don't go not ready. Set yourself on that path. Then Allah says that's not enough. Why? He wants your spirituality to be a part of your life. Spirituality, we see that over here, what do we say? Oh, this individual is spiritual in his own right. What does that mean? That means that he does not conform to regular spirituality. Islam says we don't have that, with all due respect. Be however you want to be, but you want to be one of us, you have to be like one of us. If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, you want to be a Muslim, you want to look like a Muslim, you have to sound like a Muslim. You have to act like a Muslim. You have to uphold yourself within society as a Muslim. Unfortunately, in our society, our Muslim sisters are very well known, right? They carry their identity around their head and how they dress. But we have an easy pass. Nobody knows who we are. Therefore, our identity, inshallah, we'll talk later on days and other days about our identity. We have to ensure that our identity survives and that it is shown. Nonetheless, Islam tells you not just your prayers. I want more from you. I want you, when you walk in the street, to walk in a certain way. وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Do not walk on the world, in the street, arrogantly. Don't walk arrogantly. Why not? I'm cool, right? I'm cool. I got a nice car. You know, I'm a boxer. I'm a UFC fighter. I play taekwondo. I think I'm cool. I am cool. By all accounts, everybody in high school thinks I'm cool. I'm a bit older than you guys. We used to call them jocks. I don't know what you guys call them today. Okay? I'm a cool kid. Why can't I be arrogant? Islam says that's not our way. There are certain rituals, certain actions, certain way you have to be. That certain way has to be carried through. That is a part of your identity as a Muslim, as an individual. Now, as we say, going back to what we're talking about, we're referring to shara'a. When we are coming to shara'a, the rituals, Islam says that there are certain rituals that I need you to practice. Such as what? By the way, we said that the Quran has mentioned 4 verses about rituals. All of these verses talk about what? They talk about Al-Hajj. What is Al-Hajj? Al-Hajj is one of the priorities, one of the obligations in Islam, right? When you go to the house of Allah. Let's see these verses. The Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 158, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Inna as-Safa wal Marwa min sha'air Allah. The Safa and Marwa are from the rituals of Allah. In another verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuhillu sha'air Allah. The verse that we read in the beginning. ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ. This one we have heard all the time. ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ فَإِنَّهَا مِنْ تَقْوَى الْقُلُوبِ. And he who magnifies, who holds the rituals of Allah in great magnitude and respect, it is truly a sign of taqwa al-qulub, of the God conscientiousness of the heart, the God fearness, God awareness of the heart. Lastly but not least, وَالْبُدُنَ جَعَلْنَاهَا لَكُمْ مِنْ شَعَائِرِ اللَّهِ. Budun are the types of camels that are used for sha'air, for Hajj. Why would the Quran focus on these? And specifically, why does the Quran in one verse specifically says ذَلِكَ وَمَنْ يُعَظِّمْ شَعَائِرَ اللَّهِ? First and foremost, let's be clear about something. Rituals are not something that's religious only. Rituals are part of our human nature, a part of who we are. Who we are wants us to what? To have sha'air, okay? The sha'ira in Arabic, the word sha'air in Arabic has a specific definition. It is مظاهر العبادة والتقاليد وممارساتها. The definition is the manifestation of worship, its tradition and practices. That is when we use the word sha'air in a religious sense. Now, when we look at every civilization, wherever we go, the second there is a group of people that have come together in a specific manner, in a specific place, wherever it might be, they have began and started rituals and traditions. That is what we call traditions. What is a tradition? A tradition is a specific type of practice that is practiced by a group of people, right? For example, what are some of our Canadian traditions? Give me answers, brothers. What are some of your Canadian traditions? Huh? Hockey. Sure. Poutine. Well, that's not really a tradition. That's a cuisine. Hockey. Hockey is a traditional sport, right? What about Thanksgiving? What about Memorial Day, Remembrance Day? Right? July 1st. Let's take a day like Remembrance Day. What do we remember on Remembrance Day? You guys never wore those poppies? Go ahead. Sent to martyrs. People that fought and bled for us to survive, right? That's why we wear the poppies, right? What do we do for Thanksgiving? We eat turkey. Why do we eat turkey? We celebrate a specific occasion that happened when the pilgrims first came, right? Now, I'm not here to justify, to say what happened is right or wrong. That's not my point. My point is that there are traditions within every civilization. Those traditions are what keeps us tied to our past. Imagine if you're walking in a forest, in a dense forest. If you don't know the path you have taken, would you know how to get back or would you get lost? Who here goes hiking a lot? If you don't know where you're coming from, you will get lost. The point that we have taken throughout history as humanity is that we need to know where we are coming from. One, so that we do not fall into the same problems that we have in the past. Number two is so that we learn from our mistakes and our issues. Number three is that we do not make the same issues, the same follies, the same tragedies that have taken place. That's why, what do we say? Every culture has a point that they say we shall never forget this point. Adding to the fact that remembering those that have come before you is a point of pride. You can look at every culture and you can see that in every culture there are specific individuals that bring pride to their people. They bring pride to their people. In fact, the Arabs have a lot of those examples. There's a one poem, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a poem that says, قالوا أبو الصخر من شيبان قلت كلا لعمري بل منه شيبان فكم أب على بابن ذرى شرف كما على رسول الله عدنان صلى الله عليه وآله. Shayban is a very famous individual, a very famous Arab. Okay? He had a son named Abu Sakhr. So they used to say Abu Sakhr, who also became famous. They used to say Abu Sakhr is from the tribe of Shayban. This man responds and he says, no, you're making a mistake. Shayban is from Abu Sakhr. For how many fathers and ancestors have become elevated by their sons? The way that the prophets elevated Adnan. Adnan is the great-grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These individuals in our history, these individuals have played grand roles in our life. These grand roles shaped us into who we are. These grand roles made us, we are who we are. For example, why do you walk? Anybody here takes pride in what? I know that we have Arabs here, we have Pakistanis, we have Indians, we have... How many times have you walked up to a Pakistani, asked him if he's Indian? What does he say? Huh? Or how many times have you walked to an Iraqi, called him an Irani? What does he say? We take pride of things that have no effect on us in all reality, because our identity is Islamic first and foremost, right? I'm not saying no, with all due respect to every other identity. But what I'm saying is we take pride in these because these play a role in our formation, in our intellect, in our being. Therefore, we celebrate them. When we celebrate them, to bring us pride, to carry us on in pride. Unfortunately, time is wrapping up, so I don't want to take too much of these. The Arabs, pre-Islamic, the proto-Islamic Arabs, okay, or the pre-Islamic Arabs, the proto-Arabs, let's call them that if we can. Actually, pre-Islamic Arabs is a better term. What we refer to as Jahiliyyah. Why do we call them Jahiliyyah? We call them time of ignorance, right? Because they were not enlightened to the concept of Islam. However, they still had practices that they carried on, rituals that they carried on. Amongst those rituals were what? Al-Ashhur al-Hurum. What does that mean? The forbidden months. Why did they have forbidden months? We have to realize that the Arabs, okay, when I say the Arabs here, I'm referring to specifically the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula, and specifically in the area of Hijaz. Not all the Arabs. The Arabs of Hijaz. The Arabs of Hijaz lived in a barren land, a land where you couldn't grow anything. And they lived in a nomadic style. They prided themselves on what? On being Bedouin invaders. You know how today we hear the term Viking? What is a Viking? A Viking means to attack, to invade, to take over, right? The Arab Bedouins were no different than that. They had very little. The Vikings were farmers most of the time, by the way. Nonetheless, that's not my point. The Arabs had very little. So whenever they would find a water well, they would gather around it, and they would fight over it, and they would kill over it. They were herders of camel and sheep, but they were willing to fight and kill each other for camels and sheep. So they had to set for themselves times of peace. They called them Al-Ashhur al-Hurum, the forbidden months. These months you are not allowed to wage war or go to fight during these months. 4 months in specific. Okay? Muharram al-Haram. From its name, Muharram means the forbidden. Muharram, count with me. Muharram, Rajab, Dhul Qa'da wa Dhul Hujjah. Muharram, Rajab, Dhul Qa'da wa Dhul Hujjah. These were 4 forbidden months. These 4 forbidden months, the Arabs would not wage war on each other. Hence the verse, when the verse says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu la tuhillu sha'air Allah wa la shahr al-haram. Do not violate the sanctity of the rituals of Allah, nor the forbidden month. Allah reasserted this, asserted these months. السيدة فاطمة صلوات الله وسلامه عليها صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. السيدة Fatima describes the Arabs pre-Islam. What does she say? I'm going to recite it in Arabic and then translate it to English. She says, وَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ. And you were on the edge of the pit fire, of a pit of fire. Right on the edge, you're about to fall over. مضغة الشارب ونهزة الطامع وقبسة العجلان وموطئ الأقدام تشربون الطرق وتقتاتون القد والورق أذلة خاسئين صاغرين تخافون أن يتخطفكم الناس من حولكم فأنقذكم الله بأبي محمد صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه فبعد التي والتي after all of, no, I'll translate. She says, and you were on the edge of a pit of fire, like the sip of a drink. Meaning what? A sip of a drink, meaning it's not enough for the enemy to even drink enough. Like, you know how when you're thirsty, a sip of a drink is never enough. She says that's what you were, like a sip of a drink for someone who is thirsty. Or the opportunity of the greedy. Anybody can come and take what they wanted from you. The quick grab of someone who is in rush, who grabs something really quickly. And the stepping stone, or the mat where people step on. You used to drink at-taraq. Taraq is water that is mixed with the urine of animals and the blood, because they would only have one water source. So animals would do whatever they did in the water, or they would kill each other in the same water well, and they would drink from it. وَتَقْتَاتُونَ الْقِدَّ وَالْوَرَقِ, and you would dry up the intestines to chew on from hunger, and the desert flower. أَذِلَّةً خَاسِئِينَ, belittled and worthless, until Allah enlightened your life with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He elevated you from one stance to another. However, we see that these individuals, the same individuals who refused to give the rights to Ahlul Bayt what was deserving for them, the same individuals who used to say, Ya Ali, tell Fatima to either cry day or night. We can't handle it. She's too much for us. Those same individuals attacked Imam Hussein on the day of Muharram. Sallallahu alayhi wa Aba Abdullah. So when we stand and we want to look at rituals and we want to identify ourselves, what is better to identify with than a man who fought for freedom, than a man who sacrificed himself for freedom? Imam Hussein salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, he says, Wallahi lam akhruju ashiran wala batira. By God, I did not rise, I did not move towards them with evil intent, nor without reason. Not that I had nothing else to do. However, do you not see that good is not being enjoined and evil is not being refrained from? وإنما خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن آمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. I have risen, I have moved to seek righteousness within the nation of my grandfather. I wish to enjoin what is correct, what is right, and refrain from what is evil. Then he says, بأبي وأمي وكأني بأوصالي تقطعها عسلان الفلوات بين النواويس وكربلاء. And I can see as if my limbs are torn apart by the desert beasts between Nawawis and Karbala. La ilaha illallah. Ya ibn Rasulillah, then why do you want people to come with you? What is your point? He says, فَمَنْ قَبَلَنِي قَبُولُ الْحَقِّ, and whoever accepts me in the path of truth, فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِالْحَقِّ, for Allah is the truth. And whoever rejects me, then I shall be patient. But this is a promise that has been undoubted on to me. La ilaha illallah ya Aba Abdullah. Then he says to them, whoever comes after me shall be martyred. Know that from the get-go. And whoever doesn't come after me will never see victory. Allahu Akbar ya Hussein. They say Imam al-Hussein, when he wanted to leave Medina, they say he sent Al-Abbas ibn Ali, bi Abi wa Ummi Aba al-Fadl. He sends his brother Al-Abbas. Al-Abbas alayhi salam, he was the caretaker of Sayyida Zainab. They say when Al-Abbas came to Sayyida Zainab, he said to her, Zainab qumi, let's go. She says, where are we going? He says, Al-Hussein alayhi salam, our Imam, wants to leave and go to Mecca and then towards Iraq. She looks and she says, and Abbas, and who is my kafil? Who will care for me, Abul Fadl? He says, Zainab, why would you ask a question like that when I am present, ya Zainab? Why did he say that? Why was he surprised? Because they narrate that Al-Abbas alayhi salam bi Abi wa Ummi, one of the final moments of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Sayyida Zainab came to him and she says, Aba ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, man li ba'dak, who was my protector after you? He says, Bunayya Zainab, you have Hassan, you have Hussein. She says, Aba, Hassan and Hussein are my imams, but I want somebody to be at my beck and call. I want somebody to serve me. He says, Bunayya Zainab, look at your brothers. Choose one from amongst your brothers. She looks and her eye falls upon Al-Abbas. She says, Abba, I want Al-Abbas. Al-Abbas was standing there. They say Al-Abbas came. He says, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to him, he says, Ya Bunay, Ya Abbas, Usika bi Zainab. Take care of Zainab. She's my entrust with you. He says, Abba la uqirrannaka ayna. Abba, I shall make you proud. I shall be the pupil of your eye. They say Al-Abbas alayhi salam, when he came to Zainab and she said that to him, she says, and who will be my protector? Who will be my escort? He says, Zainab, why would you say something to me like that when you know I am here? They say then he made Bani Hashim stand 2 rows back to back. And he came himself, alayhi salam, حاسر العمامة حافي القدمين. And he says, Zainab, we are ready to leave. They say when he walked, Al-Abbas alayhi salam was a very broad-shouldered man. He was very big and broad-shouldered. When he came to her, she was walking behind him. They say, وَكَانَ يَتَخَطَّفُ أَبْصَارَ الْقَوْمِ. And he would look towards the people. Who would dare look up towards Zainab? They say when he would look, he was, by the way, Abbas means the angry lion. When he would look, he would put fear in people's hearts. So nobody would look towards Zainab until she rode her camel. She rode the huddaj of her camel. That's how Zainab left Al-Madinah. However, how did Zainab alayhi salam return? Zainab alayhi salam, when she returned, she didn't come back into the Medina. Brothers and sisters, they say that Imam Zainul Abidin, when he came, he stayed outside. He stayed outside of Medina. He did not enter Medina. Why didn't he enter Medina? He says, because there are shamitin. There are people that want to mock us for the pains that we have fallen through. Nonetheless, brothers and sisters, when we are talking about the rituals of Ahlul Bayt, we are talking about a path, about an individual that has set a path for us. Hence, we see our poets, when they come, they talk about Imam al-Hussein and the rituals of the Ahlul Bayt of Imam Hussein. We consider the rituals of whom, the path of whom, the path that our poets take. We see our imams, all of them, on such a night, on a night like tonight, they would gather the poets and they would ask them to read. In one narration, Aban, by the name of Ibn Abi Harun al-Makfuf, he entered and he saw Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida. Imam Ali al-Rida, he says, Ya Abu Harun, read something for me, recite something for me. Abu Harun, he stood and he says, Umrur ala jadath al-Husayn. Imam says, no, stop. Don't recite this way. He says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, how would you like me to recite? He says, recite the way you guys recite in Iraq. The Iraqis have a specific way of reciting eulogy. I apologize, I don't perfect it, but I will try my best. He says, I will do so, Ya ibn Rasulullah. He stood and he says, Umrur ala jadath al-Husayn. Pass by the body of Imam Hussein. Jadath means the dead body. وقل لأعظمه الزكية يا أعظم لا زلت من وطفاء ساكبة روية وإذا مررت به فاطل به وقف المطية. He says, and when you pass by him, stand there and take a long time, don't move. Then he says, وَابْكِ الْمُطَهَّرَ لِلْمُطَهَّرِ وَالْمُطَهَّرَةِ الزَّكِيَّةِ. And wail over the purified one, Imam Hussein, to the purified one, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and her, the purified female, Fatima al-Zahra. Then he says, كَبُكَاءِ مُعْوِلَةٍ أَتَتْ بِيَوْمٍ وَاحِدٍ أَتَتْ يَوْمًا بِوَاحِدِهَا الْمَنِيَّةِ. I want you to wail the way that a mother with one son wails over her son if he had died. They say Abu Harun, they say the Imam, he started crying up until he gets to a point and he says, Abu Harun, he says, the wailing became so loud that the Imam, he said, stop. Here is enough. Why? Because the sounds of the women showed. They say, Abu Abdullah, Sayyidi, Ya Hujjat Allah, Ya Ibn al-Hasan. Abu Abdullah is gone, but our Hujjah is with us. Ya Hujjatullah, Imam al-Rida couldn't hear the wails of a woman who was safe in her own home. She was safe in her own home. He said to Abu Harun, stop. Here is enough. We can't hear the Alawiyat's voice should not show. I say, Ya Hujjatullah ibn al-Hasan, how was it when you heard the wails, or when you believe, when you see the wails of the Ahlul Bayt, the women of the Ahlul Bayt? Imam al-Hujjah Ajalallah Faraja, he narrates this in his Nahi al-Muqaddas, in his Ziyara Nahi al-Muqaddas. The wails, he says, and they ran out beating their heads and crying and weeping. La ilaha illallah. I ask Allah بحق الحسين الوجي وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه والتسعة المعصومين من بنيه أن يفرج عنا بحق محمد وآله فرجا عاجلا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب من ذلك. Of course, brothers and sisters, our faraj is the faraj of our Imam. Brothers and sisters, keep in mind that our Imam, the Imam of our time, is with us. Unfortunately, we don't know who he is. We all sit here and we all keep each other company. But who keeps him company? Inshallah, I want to remind you to recite Ziyarat Dua al-Nudbah and speak to the Imam. Azizun alayya an ara an-nasa wa la tura. Says, dear to my heart that I see the people, but nobody sees you. You are by yourself and you are lonely. On these nights we do muwasat for our Imam, Imam al-Asri wal-Zaman. اللهم إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات ومن مات على الهدى والإيمان رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.